Back zooming, live stream. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're back in public session at 4:49, and we're picking up our agenda at agenda item 3, confirmation of previous minutes. And these are minutes held of our last meeting, 27th of November 2024. Are there any matters of correction for those minutes? There was one that the public forum speaker raised. Is that a valid one or not? Has anyone checked? Councillor Weston.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I did. And the reason being is that, as far as I was aware, that things are tabled in public forum, get dealt with in public forum after the council meeting, not on a full council agenda at short notice. So that's the reason I voted for no.
Okay, thank you. So that's a correction on page 12. Anyone else have any corrections? Somebody like to move? Deputy Mayor, second Councillor Weston. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. The action point list, agenda item 4. Right, 25 is the Spent Kaiki Campground lease, and there is a report to be gathered and come back to council in the new year. And we provided some feedback into that last month.
On 25, just a comment, once all the information is requested, come back in the new year, could we have a time like the one below says February? It could mean March or April, it's still in the new year. Yeah, 26 says that it's going to come back in February, I think it's here.
Yes, that's 25, it's just that's further up.
Oh, beg your pardon, okay, rightio, thanks.
Are there any other questions on that? Okay, I'll move to accept the action point. Councillor Grafton, all those in favour? Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Right, item 5 is the Westport Stormwater Management Strategy and Conceptual Delivery Plan. Just you might respect this paper. Read what's
the yeah, we can take that as read.
Councillor Reid.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I think your microphone's off. You're very, very, very distant.
Yeah.
Everyone else is clear.
Is that better?
Oh,
yeah. Wonder what's happened to that? Battery gone flat.
no,
Okay, apologies for that. Thanks for that, Councillor Reid. Jess, do you want to speak anything to it or take it as read?
I was taking it as read. This was an information paper with the idea being that we'd like to take you through a workshop next year instead, probably in that April-May period of time when we have a better understanding of the research that we've done in that interim period.
Yep. So this, as you know, councillors, is the stormwater element of that's been brought about effectively as our part of the flood protection scheme for Westport, and so we needed to get a regional infrastructure fund application in by the end of the year, and so that's sort of the basis of bringing this work forward to this. Is there any questions out of the report, Councillor Weston?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Page 32, it's got St Clear's College. I'm not sure where that is. Is it supposed to be St Kenneth's?
St. Kenneth's or St. Mary's?
St. Kenneth's.
Yes, I think it's meant to be St. Kenneth's.
Yes.
Who else had a question? Councillor Howard?
Good.
We might have to.
Oh, sorry, here we go. It's just a little bit on the side, but just with the mobile pumping solutions, do we have capacity for storing them? And would they be a bit like generators and require like a regular running to keep them serviceable, but like your emergency generators, they're meant to be run every once a month or something?
Thanks, councillor.
Yes, for both. So we would need to organize storage, either here through the yard, possibly extra storage at the wastewater treatment plant if we want to have them high. And they need regular running. And as part of a preparedness strategy, I would think about like annual workshops with the operators, so we know everybody's trained on these pumps and doesn't need to figure out when the rain's coming how to operate them. So to tie in regular training with like the routine turning of the impellers and all this stuff.
Councillor Farlett.
Just on page 37, the second bullet point, collaborating with the West Coast Regional Council on Flood Protection. There's a statement there that says, to date, no evidence suggests the stop bank will have significant adverse effects on the existing system. Is that true, that putting a wall up will not affect our stormwater system at all? That seems hard to believe.
I'll defer to the expert on that.
It's a very hot one to answer, yes or no. We have a surface flow stormwater model, and the big impact would be surface flow. So stormwater, like our pipes, they handle the small events, while when they get overwhelmed, the water needs to follow natural contours and go somewhere. And there was the bathtub. In other regions where you have a big uphill catchment and you have the bottom stop bank basically damming your catchment, these are the occasions where you have that effect. Westport, because it's so flat, first all the micro catchments would basically flood before it flows. And that's the assumption of in a really big event, 100-year event, there's really no flow. Like before the water arrives at the stop bank location, with or without, where the alignment goes, half of town is underwater. It's not like it would like really dam Westport. And then given the I think the concern of, well, we can't discharge our stormwater when the river level is high, when the river has a flood and is at the top of the stop bank. Yes, we can't drain the water. Currently, during high tide, we can't drain the water. And I think the assumption is if the river is that high on the stop bank, it would go through town otherwise. It's a very soft approach from my side to say there's no evidence. If you would drill down and really want to find something, maybe you would find something. But what we know at the moment, I can confidently say we're better off with the stop bank than without in these big scenarios, like in a 150-100-year event. And it would be very easy to demonstrate that on my maps. I've maps which visualize where the water would pond and flood. And then it's possibly easier to understand.
Which is why I think a workshop's probably a better way to go about this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions without diving right into deep detail? Because I think that's a workshop. I'll go to you, Councillor Sampson, and then Councillor Reedy.
Just curious as to the author of this, Infrastructure Services, who's done the report, Westport Stormwater Strategy, but it's got no name or anything. We've got another report in there, much the same, and it's always handy to be able to relate it back to whoever writes the report or but it's the delivery panel. Like, I'm not criticising, but it's just good to be able to understand who wrote it.
So this was between both Patrick and I. So Patrick, of course, more technical, me more around the funding and the how we would deliver it, the model of delivery.
And do you want to flesh out a little bit about the resource provided by DIA to help with some of that, with the Auckland input?
So DIA helped with Craig McElroy. They got in touch with Craig around, he's from Water Care, I think it was, wasn't it? Water Care.
Yeah, general manager of water, Healthy Waters, which is the stormwater department of Auckland Council.
And so he provided sort of some technical experience into the general strategy at a technical level and whether or not it was sort of in a feasible direction.
Thanks. Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report, from memory, is saying about we're putting forward a application to RIF for about $18 million, if my understanding is correct. The application, of course, as we know, is not a grant; it's only a loan, which will obviously have to be paid back at some stage. But my concern is that we've got this report, and I'd just like to say it's a good report, but we've got a few other reports to do with stormwater that are sitting on the filing cabinet, and I refer specifically to the one that we had produced late in the piece in June 22 to form part of the application to the then Minister for Local Government. That report we included an amount of $12 million for stormwater. I have it on reasonably good authority that the report, albeit done in a rushed manner, was originally looking at about $40 million, but was then slashed by a member of the then member of the SLT. Now, I have asked for a copy of that report so I could read, and I'm going to ask again, because what I'd like to be able to do is some comparative study. And as you know, I like to do comparative studies. And rather than just read a one-off report, as I say, there was one 2 years ago, I'd like to be able to just read and compare. Is there an opportunity to at least have this report from an organisation up north, placed on diligent, so that I can read? Please, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Reedy. I'll take your first question first, and it's a grant that they're seeking through Regional Infrastructure Fund, not a loan. Whether or not we'll be successful or not will be a matter for the Regional Infrastructure Fund, but that's the plan.
Just to clarify, the Regional Infrastructure Fund provides both grants and loans. We've applied for a grant.
Yeah.
They may come to us and say, we will only give you a loan, but that's highly unlikely in this situation.
Okay.
And if I can sort of comment on some of the other reports, I'll need to investigate exactly what those reports are, but the original, I suppose, $40 million request, it wasn't, my understanding, a member of the SLT that chose to pull that down. It was the advice from DIA that I think was, you've got to be joking. And the maximum that they said we would ever be able to reasonably get was in the order of 15 to 18 million. So it was DIA advice that reduced that, and that then forced rework on what the option was, and hence the work that Craig McElroy came to support as well. So this is well researched and well worked through. We are still, as council has been advised in the past, there is still a further impact study being done by Worley's that will come out in a couple of months' time, that will give us a better understanding of, I suppose the way I look at it is, what impact will our money give us? How much benefit will it give us? How high will the water go, and where? And that's a really important factor in this as well. But the decision to go from 40 down to 18 was directly from DIA, not arbitrary decision from council.
Thank you. I think that also, and more latterly, that is the reason why the water care expertise was injected into the process as well, was to satisfy DIA around the rigour that was being put around the numbers and the approach being taken. So that was my understanding of that. That sort of came through the Resilient Westport group as well. Councillor Naylor.
So we've got flooding at the moment. I mean, have we got a timeline for this, and what are we going to do in the meantime for these streets that are flooding and properties that are flooding? And it's not from the river, obviously, it's from rainfall events.
Through the chair, yes, there are flooding issues at the moment, and the pumps will deal with the stormwater from rain. If the river did breach anything, the pumps would effectively be useless because you can't pump the size of the bullet.
That current state, so I'll pick up what I think. The current state, though, I think what the council's referring to is we see on social media every time we get a sort of a 1 in 5 year sort of downpour. So I think Patrick's map, or Mr. Ehrlich's map, highlights those hotspots around town that are effectively the low points. There are some of those, I understand that there is some fairly substantial work, I'm thinking the end of Cobden Street, that is affecting right up into Bright and Peel, is it? Where there's actually a collapse that needs to be. Do you want to just flesh that out? Because I think that's the number. What we're doing is BAU or BAU enhanced.
I mean, at the moment we do have a collapsed pipe in Cobden Street, and it's under the wharf access, so it's quite problematic to fix. There's a engineering solution underway. We should have a design report for that shortly, and we're looking at some short-term options for that, which we hopefully will have out early next year. And that caused some increased flooding in that area due to the rain event a couple of days ago, which was unfortunate. But that's a BAU issue based on 100-year-old pipes that are also undersized. And the other thing that's come out of that is the current pipe is 450 diameter. The pipe that they're going to replace it with, that collapsed section, will be the first piece of 1200 diameter pipe going in. So it sort of also identifies the problem we've got, that our pipes are so small and do not cope with anything. And it's part of the pumping problem is we put a pump somewhere and you can actually pump that area dry very quickly, and the rest of town's flooded because the pipes can't bring the water to the pump fast enough, which is why some of the pumps have to be mobile, and we have to be quite agile with what we do. So Westport being very flat with raised roads just causes so many issues for dealing with stormwater.
Another point just to pick up on it, and I think Patrick's report touches on it, and I think that's what the Worley's work coming is going to cover, is that we're not talking about a Westport that doesn't have a surface water flooding problem off the back of any of this work. There will be residual flooding in the streets. The aim will be making sure that stays as nuisance flooding rather than entering houses. So I think that's an important thing for the community to understand, is we won't be talking about, we're highly unlikely to have enough money to completely reline Westport, and there will be never any backing up of certain parts of low parts of town, because I don't think that's a realistic outcome. But the aim should absolutely be to keep it out of particularly domestic houses. Is that a fair? Do you want to?
I probably would say that's a slightly optimistic outcome. Until we know what Worley's come back with, we probably can't say we won't flood parts of town, in terms of there will be some houses that are still vulnerable to flooding. But we won't know that until we get that report and how the pump system works. And the other issue we've got with our pipes is they're so old, if you tried to use them to effectively suction pipes, you'll collapse them, and then you won't get any drainage at all. So we're vulnerable in so many areas, but that then flows on to the second part of the work that Patrick's doing around some of the nature-based solutions, which will potentially help contain the water in areas that we need to and disperse it in other ways. But that's also detailed for the workshop later on. So there is ongoing risk to the town. There is no silver bullet here.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just a little follow-up. There's been some community comment, and I note that you say the pipe sizes are way undersized. Some of them were relined. What effect has that had on, the problem? Has that exacerbated it? There was, people are saying that the diameter is now a lot smaller because they're being relined.
I will pass you to the expert.
I think there's a misconception. So most wastewater lines got relined. We usually don't reline stormwater. So very different fields. And just to give you like a 450 pipe, if you reline that, you reduce the entire diameter maybe by 3 millimeter. So that's very neglectable. And hydraulic, you have it's now very smooth rather than a coarse concrete pipe. So there's an offset of smaller diameter, but actually the water flows much better. So that's just a misconcept of people think they go from big to small.
So we talked about sewer pipes, not stormwater, but we have a dual system in parts of town. So some of them would be still taking stormwater.
Selective, where we're actively separating the systems. So I wouldn't call it like a true dual system. In most areas, we have them going parallel.
Okay, thank you.
Right, councillors, keen to move this along. Okay, so have we moved and seconded that already? Okay, so there's a recommendation there that the Westport Stormwater Management Strategy and Conceptual Delivery Plan dated 18 December be received. Anyone like to move that way? Councillor Grafton, seconded Councillor Howard. Excuse me. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Just couching the team whether we need a break. We've got about 20 minutes till we have to have one. Let's do another agenda item. So the next one is agenda item 6, which is the master planning program update, communication and engagement. I'll go to Mr. Tazanin if he has anything he wants to talk us through.
Absolutely, thank you very much. Excuse me. So the purpose of the report today is largely to put forward the engagement plan. So throughout the participatory design process that we've run this year, there's always been the intention to create a draft and then go much further and wider into the community to carry this conversation onwards. So with governance approval, we would like to go out in early February and start that engagement. A lot of this engagement will be face-to-face. We will have outreach programs. We will deliberately go to groups, to businesses, and make sure we bring the conversation to people. We will also have the hub open in the weekends and in the evenings and at times of day that do work for people. In light of some of the media recently, I think it's worth just quickly some of the key messages of the engagement and just reiterating some of those. The master plan is not advocating abandoning Westport or moving Westport. Key message 1. It's a really part of an interrelated set of work streams, so it's not one or another. This is working under Resilient Westport, which is an externally funded program of works, so not a ratepayer funded program of works, and is interrelated to stormwater management and also the defences of Westport. The master plan is a lot wider than hazard responses. It looks at economic opportunities for growth, and it also looks at some of the alleviating things we could do around the social deprivation indies here as well. So if there's any questions on the engagement plan, further to that, we are also intending to put forward a preliminary and non-binding application to the Regional Infrastructure Fund. So there was an email sent from the lead agency, Kanoa, essentially saying, put your hand up by the end of this year, or that fund will highly likely be exhausted. So it's preliminary. I understand we still need to go through community engagement. We still need to come back to council to formally adopt the plan. It is a placeholder at this point in time only that we are seeking approval for. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor Naylor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. What are we applying for in that fund?
So at the moment, we're giving them a band of likely costs. So because the project is not ready, and it's a two-stage process as well, stage one is an initial hand up. So we're giving them quite a wide band in terms of costing, because we still need to firm those costings up. It's only because of that pressure from Kānoa going down that we're just saying put a foot forward for the moment in time.
Give me an idea of what those costings cover.
What the costings cover?
Yep.
Right. So it would be to establish a special purpose vehicle to negotiate the Pāmu land side of things and start the early survey works, etc., that need to be done, and the early land development program. Part of the work program, though, also looks at the main street of Westport. It's picking up on that 2017 revitalisation project and starting to breathe some life into that as well. So at the moment, as I said, it's really high level in terms of what we intend to do in those early foundation steps, but that will get firmed up and re-presented to council if the decision is made to enter into stage two.
Thank you. Any other questions? It's been quite a journey for the people, you know, particularly. I mean, I've been to, I think, one or maybe two workshops, but the stakeholder group have dedicated, which is quite a cross section of the community, have dedicated quite a lot of time and effort to getting to the draft, and really what we're doing here is improving that, going out to everyone and get their feedback and finalise the final plan. Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thanks through the chair. Thanks, Paul, for that update. I just heard you mention about, I can't remember the name Pāmu, but definitely Landcorp land. You mentioned about doing some work on there, preliminary work. But my understanding was that we still need to apply to Landcorp to actually have their land. Has the land been passed on to BDC to be able to undertake the work, or is it still a work in progress?
So as per the workshop that we had with Governance Board 2 weeks ago, we haven't made a lot of official approaches in terms of going out and trying to secure the land, because we've always said in the workshops we're not premeditating outcomes. So we still have community engagement to go, and then obviously formal council decisions. So no work would be undertaken in that space. The application to regional infrastructure would look at some of the overhead costings in order to negotiate and secure those land parcels. We've been working with the local general manager of the Landcorp or Pāmu estate to date, and due to one of the media articles, we've also written to the Minister of State-Owned Enterprises, just opening a door for a conversation, but we are not pushing go on anything at this point in time until we have community engagement and formal council approval.
Thanks, Paul. Councillor Naylor.
Just in terms of community engagement, the difference between that and consultation.
Excellent point. So we've been really deliberate in saying engagement. The consultative process is a statutory and legislative pathway that is really prohibitive to an extent in terms of how to have the conversations and the official side of that. Engagement really is about having a deep dive conversation. You're still recording all the information in both raw format and obviously in consolidated format, but it is more about a conversation than a statutory process. So one thing that we're exploring with the governance team here is saying, is the long-term plan the statutory process for this or not? Because this isn't a ratepayer expense. So it doesn't have that kind of link into the LTP. But that's something we're still looking through at the moment. At the moment, I genuinely believe it's really important to go out and have this conversation with the community of Westport in the interim, but being really clear that this is engagement, not a consultative exercise at this point in time.
Thank you. And just picking up on the LTP comment, it's going to be dependent a bit on the engagement and what the final plan looks like as to whether there is anything for our long-term plan yet, or whether it's more just a bit of narrative, because it might be, it's not to say there won't be a cost to council in years to come if as town potentially starts evolving into a certain place, but that's not where we're at yet. Okay, if everyone's good, we've got recommendations there 1 through 5. I propose just to take them all together unless someone has a different view. Okay. Oh yeah, do you like them separately? Okay, cool, that's no problem. Right, so does someone want to move number 1, approves the initiation of wide community engagement on the draft master plan as per the attached communication and engagement plan. Move Councillor O'Keefe, seconded Councillor Grafton. Any discussion? All those in favour? Any against? Oh, sorry, I beat you. Do you want to revisit that, or is it pertinent? Yep, okay.
Yeah, just in terms of, what we're looking at it in terms of the master plan. So we're definitely saying it's not a plan to relocate Westport, but in reading right through what we've been presented, there's reference to Lyndhurst Street, there's reference to the lane that we've funded out here, and there's a little bit of reference to the port and expansion of the port land, if you like. If there's presumably some relocation of some properties, that opens up land to be used by the port in terms of economic gain. But the rest of it seems to be all about the relocation and the building of a new Westport, if you like, or a new part of Westport. And it seems to be in quite abstract terms, and I'm wondering how we're going to get engagement from people, on sort of such an abstract thing. There's nothing, no plan or concrete thing that people might, the average person might engage with. And I'm really concerned about what level of engagement we're seeking back. Is it at a high level abstract sort of form, or are we going to deep dive down into details with people? And we don't have a lot of details at the moment, it appears to me.
I can't answer that. Can you, Paul?
Absolutely. So the content that you've had today is a small portion of the total volume of content. So there is a lot more behind it. We've got some of the content in it, Resilient Westport Hub on the walls as well. But those abstract terms, absolutely. And that's something in the power of being able to have conversations with people that we can clarify some of those on the way through as well. But to pick up on one of your points as well, Councillor, was that this is another part of Westport. It is not picking Westport up and moving it as such. This is another part of the village. So it is a large part about that growth element here. And that's been a large part of the findings throughout the last 12 months as well. The rating base is really small, the deprivation is really high, and we're promoting essentially a growth strategy for the district that also doubles up as that insurance policy for this community, that if there is an event, at a certain point in time, and people may have to move, similar to the residential red zone in Christchurch, then we are able to have those residents stay here. Because at the moment, that option doesn't exist. But we will clarify through that engagement process this with the community. But I also take the note, everybody understands information differently. So having been in an engagement space for a good 14 years, I absolutely respect and understand that.
Thank you. Right, if there's nothing further, that number 1 has been moved and seconded. So we'll revote just because I had missed Graham's indication to speak. So all those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, number 2 is notes the provided content, pardon me, and the project will engage with. Notes the provided content that the project will engage with the community on. It's quite a tongue twister. So that's referring to the content that's in your plan, in your diligent, in the agenda. I'll move that way. Is there a second to councillor O'Keefe? Second. Any discussion on that? All those in favour? Any against? Okay, that's carried 2 against. That council 3 notes the findings of the engagement and the draft master plan will be presented for council endorsement / adoption in April 2025. Somebody like to move that way? Councillor Weston, seconded Councillor Grafton. Open that for any discussion. All those in favor? Are you discussing, Councillor Reedy, or voting?
Discussion, if I may, please, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly.
Just taking on board, and I'm just reiterating what you mentioned before about the long-term plan, but we're looking at April 25, and by that time we'll be, I believe, engaging with or consulting with the community on the long-term plan. And there's a bit of a crossover there because I understand what you're saying. It may be more descriptive in the long-term plan regarding this particular project, or there may be some dollars attached to it. So I'm just a bit concerned. I'm going to support it, but I'm a bit concerned about just the crossover. That's all.
Yeah.
In terms of the engagement.
Yep. Thanks, Councillor Reid. I think. Do we have any comment on that? I mean, I think it will literally be a narrative to say that that there is a master planning process been going that was in draft form. If there's, I guess, do you want to answer this question?
No, you're on the right track there as well. And we will try and come back in March. I do understand there's consultation fatigue that kicks in as well for people. So hopefully we'll be able to come back to the table in March rather than April, which will hopefully get those timelines working a little bit better, Councillor Eadie.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved. Councillor Weston, Councillor Grafton, all those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Number 4, that council notes any formal consultation, if required, will occur through the long-term plan process in April 2025. I'll move that way. Second to Councillor Grafton. We kind of covered that in the last discussion. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. And resolve that Council 5 notes a preliminary and non-binding application will be made to the Regional Infrastructure Fund for seed funding. Moved Councillor O'Keefe, seconded Councillor Grafton. Open that for any discussion. Councillor Naylor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like a bit of addition to the wording to say, along the lines that no ratepayer funding will be involved in this application, if you like.
That no ratepayer funding?
Yeah.
Yep.
Subject to no ratepayer funding.
Yep. Yeah, so yes, so I think I think it's an addition at the end, noting.
Can we suggest it just as a grant application? Because saying no funding was of course the start time and everything, so that can be misconstrued. What really is, we're applying for a grant. Just to notice a grant application rather than implying there's no incidental cost in some form to council. It's not a direct budget, but if you put no ratepayer funding, some could construe that, you spent staff time on it, therefore there's a cost. So I think it's labelled as a grant application.
Are you? How do we want to handle this, Councillor?
Yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned because my understanding was the whole project's funded outside of council, so staff time is presumably being paid for by that 500,000.
Yep.
If I may, the current funding bucket, which is all externally funded, will also be part of the RIF application. So this is not staff time and resources going into it, other than obviously through the reporting lines that we have at council. So the funding application is externally funded also.
Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand where Graham's coming from in terms of that, But in terms of grant, I hear what I think Anthony mentioned. We have to remember that this RIF, I understand what in terms of the grant, but the RIF is essentially, and I'm happy to be corrected, is essentially loan and equity investment, with grants being, I think the wording from memory was limited. Let's just put it that way. So in terms of adding on something about grants into item 5, I don't approve of, because it's not necessarily mean that we're going to get a grant from RIF. However, I do agree that for seed funding, without ratepayer investment or something like that, which is the line that you were going across before. So I agree with that, and I'll also go along with that. But to mention grant, any grant funding, I believe is incorrect at the moment. Equity investment and loan funding is what essentially is happening with. Like I see, Paul's got his hand up there, but I'm happy to be corrected on that.
Oh, you're correct. You're correct. That is the preference of the Crown: is less grants, more bespoke arrangements around equity and the like. But I think what we're aiming for here is a grant. But like you say, there may be some terms come back. So I think we need to add some wording, and I had it on the tip of my tongue, and then I've lost it. But I think it's just at the end of that, we just put noting that there is currently no council budget for this project.
It's important, Mr. Mayor, because we haven't done the engagement or the consultation,
Yes.
and we're doing this. We need to be sure that we're not committing ourselves without talking to the people first.
I don't disagree. So if we were to add on the end, after seed funding, noting that there is currently no approved council budget for the project. Is that an accurate wording? You comfortable with that? So it will now read: notes a preliminary and non-binding application will be made to the Regional Infrastructure Fund for seed funding, noting that there is currently no approved council budget for the project. And the mover was Councillor O'Keefe and Councillor Grafton. Are you comfortable with that as mover and seconder? Okay, that's good. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously, and I think we'll have a wee adjournment. We've been going a couple of hours. Everyone good? So we'll just adjourn for 10 minutes and come back at 5:42. Rightio, team. I'm good, you go live. Oh, we are. Okay, we are. Nice. Okay. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order, please. And we're up to agenda item 7, so we'll reconvene the meeting at 5:41. Cribbed a minute off you. And agenda item 7 is the adoption of report under section 10 of dog control 1996. And this is an annual statutory obligation, I understand. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Bastian?
Thank you, Your Worship. Happy to take any questions, councillors. As stated, it's a statutory obligation that has to be done annually. And open up to the floor for questions.
Questions on that dog report? Pretty easy. I'll just, before we do move to them, I just think it is worth acknowledging the work of that animal control, dog control team. That is the sort of pointy end of council's interactions with a lot of people, and they definitely get a lot of flack and things at times because people are quite, emotional and sensitive around their companion animals, and when they're problematic, they'd certainly bear the brunt of that. So I think it's good to acknowledge the effort of the team out on the road dealing with some of those on behalf of us and the community. And with that, I'd like to move 1 and 2. Council adopts the Buller District Council annual report on dog control policy and practices for the 23-24 financial year, and that the Secretary for Local Government has advised that it has been published in accordance with Section 10A of the Dog Control Act 1996 and Section 5, subsection 1 of the Local Government Act 2002. I'll move that way. Seconded, Deputy Mayor Basher. If there's any discussion, all those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 8 is the Buller District Council procurement policy revision, and this is, I understand, the identical document that was endorsed by the Risk and Audit Committee. So I will take that as read and just offer the opportunity for any questions that have come to mind since RAC, if there are any. For Paul, nothing you want to add, is it?
Through the chair, no, nothing. The stage, take it as read.
Okay. And I'm not seeing any questions, so the recommendations there, I'll just make sure I've got the right one. Yep. And so the recommendations, council resolves, is it all of these? Yes. Okay, review the revised procurement policy as per attachment 1. I'll take, has anyone got any issue if I take these as a group? Oh, good, okay. Oh, separate, okay. So the first one, review the revised procurement policy as per attachment 1. I'm happy to move. Seconded, Deputy Mayor. Open that for discussion. Councillor Nolan.
Yes, Mr. I put a little scenario at the RAC meeting. It still not really satisfied that there's something in there that stops that sort of thing happening, where you have a narrow prescription about what you're going to get your suppliers to provide, and therefore that eliminates some of the principles in the policy about fairness and looking after suppliers, localism, etc. Not sure how we go about it, but the reply was, well, integrity will rise to the fore, but I'd like something a bit more than that if we could.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything you want to add more than you added last?
Probably the best thing I can do is to say that all procurement plans are coming my way at the moment. So my role in that, in the first instance, is it not? Yeah, my role in reviewing every procurement plan will be in the first instance to make sure they comply with the rules. And so that's the very first thing. The second one would be if they're quite a complex procurement, then we have qualified procurement advisors. And these are government rules as well that we're working under, so they understand the government rules. And so if they're quite complex, I'll also get a second opinion with someone with the qualifications, especially if it's an NZTA procurement, because that's required as part of the funding requirements. And so that would be really as part of when you write your procurement plan, the entire point of those reviews by either myself as an independent, I wasn't involved in the procurement, I'm just reviewing it, or a secondary qualified procurement person, if it's at that level, is to say, is this within the rules? And so in a situation that's not in the rules, then that would be the response that the procurement lead gets, is this doesn't comply and therefore you need to change it, or provide me an exemption why you think it doesn't fit. And that would be the entire point of the role.
So is that your role across the whole organisation or just in infrastructure?
If I may, it is Jess's role in infrastructure, and we are rolling this, that level of procurement oversight across the organisation. So given that infrastructure spend the bulk of the money on big contracts, it's appropriate for the role to sit in this division, but the rules apply across council, and so the expertise that sits in infrastructure will be part of that review of other procurements as well. And the SLT have oversight across everything as well. So so there are levels of review, and in fact, now that when we have an approved and published procurement policy, it also then allows anyone who thinks that they have missed out to potentially raise a grievance if they thought so. So your example, I think, in RAC was around an asphalt provider who is doing something a little bit dodgy getting a job, and then the legitimate companies would go, that's not right, and they could challenge that back for us, and we don't want that to happen as well. So there's a good range of internal controls, starting with Jess's role, going through SLT, but also in terms of the general market will hold us to account as well.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the point A? Councillor Reddy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting A, but I just want to reiterate what I said at RAC. Very unusual for infrastructure services in this instance to be owners of this particular policy. Most organisations, the ownership belongs to corporate services, where there is essentially, one would expect, neutrality. I know they raise a purchase order for pens and paper and erasers and the like, but the big money is in infrastructure services, and they are the owners of their, if you like, they got the key to the chicken coop.
Councillor Reddy, I just want to quickly correct you, or not correct you, confirm that your feedback has been incorporated and the policy owner is Group Manager Corporate Services now.
Oh, so my apologies. My apologies, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
Cool.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I suspected we'd answered your question. Cool. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. My apologies.
Excellent. Anyone else? Okay, so it's been moved. Oh. Okay. Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Review the revised procurement policy as per attachment 1. Moved and seconded by myself and Deputy Mayor. All those in favour? Any against? It's carried. Just give me a nod if you're in favour, Colin, because you were quite late. Cool, thank you. Yes, carried unanimously. Well done. Okay, council, note the operational, this is B, note the operational manual for conducting contractor procurement and management manual at Buller District Council is accessible on the Buller District Council website. Move to Deputy Mayor, seconded Councillor Grafton. Any discussion on that? All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimous. Resolve that council note that the financial limits from the 2019 procurement policy are unchanged and in line with limits set by other local government organisations. So we like to move that way. Councillor Grafton, seconded Councillor Weston. Open that for any discussion. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Notes that the Risk and Audit Committee has recommended to council that they adopt this policy. Move that way, seconded Deputy Mayor Basher. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. And finally, adopts the Buller District Council revised procurement policy as per attachment 1. Moved by Councillor Farlett, seconded by Councillor Weston. Any discussion on adopting this policy? All those in favour? Any against? Were you against, Councillor? Yeah. Yep. Councillor Reedy, did you vote?
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, I'm against.
Okay, so the motion.
And name recorded, please.
Thank you. Motion's carried. 2 against, Councillors Reedy and Nallon. Okay, so that deals with that. Thank you very much. We'll go on to part of my agenda, item 9, which is the Mayor's report. Again, it is a bit, as I say, they're a bit brief due to the slightly earlier timing of this meeting. I'll just take any questions on that. There was, before I do, I will deal with the 2 external meetings, which I was going to give you a verbal update on. The Mayor's Chairs and Iwi Forum, I'll deal with that one first. So that was a meeting last Friday to discuss the regional deals policy framework of the Crown. Department of Internal Affairs gave us this briefing. It was a fairly standard briefing that we've sort of heard before. There was nothing really new out of that. Regional deals is very vague and fluid, is how I would describe it in terms of what governments are looking for in that. And all the mayors, I think, felt the same. What's clear is that regional deals do not include any money. It is, and so that does beg the question: what is in? So it's more around some regulatory optimization, those kinds of things that we could potentially advocate for. Why it's timely is the process. Again, even the process has morphed quite a bit from my earlier updates on this, where it was mooted that there were 3 or 4 or 5 councils going to be invited to participate in regional deals. Subsequent to that, the minister decided to invite every council in New Zealand to be a part of it through a simple sort of one-pager, do you, don't you want to be involved process, which closes, I think, today or tomorrow. And so the mayors and chairs and we said at this early stage we will indicate that we want to carry on having a conversation with them, and by the 28th of February next year we'll need a bit of shape around what that regional deal, what our ask or offer to the Crown is under a regional deal. And so the plan is Development West Coast will lead a bit of a process and a workshop at some point during February to try and get the agreement of this table as to what does Buller want in the regional deal. And yeah, so it sounds like I'm fudging it, but I literally don't know what else to say. It's they're not wanting a laundry list of big projects. So it's, yeah, we'll just see what comes of that. But regardless, Buller will have an option to not be a part of it if we want to. But noting, I think that'll be problematic from a regional point of view. So it's around just figuring out how we progress in that space. Councillor Naylor?
Yes, this is not a doorway to one council, is it, on the West Coast?
I don't think so. That's not been the focus. It's around the 3 or 4 focus areas of regional deals. So the regional deals are all around trying to, it's the mantra of this government around GDP growth, housing, and not resilience, is it? I can't think. There's 3 or 4. Anyway, I shouldn't look at you. You're not a chief executive anymore. Yeah. So it's the common themes of the Crown, of the government, rather than they're not talking about rationalisation of councils or anything. That doesn't seem to be a part of it. Yeah, so it's a bit early to say what I think will be in. And the other meeting was TTPP, and what did we decide there now?
We decided that we were going to have separate policies, objectives and rules for the, the new overlays, the coastal overlays, as opposed to other natural hazards.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah, so that's right. There was confusion around variations, or not confusion, but there was an opportunity for the committee to put in a submission on the plan as a committee to the hearings panel, and that was along the lines of separating out the coastal hazard element, which is effectively what variation 2 that's currently out in the community for submissions at the moment deals with, from the other natural hazard chapters, which deals with all the other earthquake hazard and landslide and all the rest of it, for aiding, all aimed at aiding the clarity and usability of the plan, which was fully supported by the committee. So that will go in as a submission to the panel, to the commissioner panel, and be considered alongside everyone else's submission in terms of what they decide to rule. Is that accurate way of capturing it?
Yeah, that's right. So if no submission goes in, then there's no pathway, if you like, for the commissioners to make any changes from the draft that was notified. So this is just sort of a cover-all. Hopefully, the people will submit along the same lines anyway. But this is just sort of a backup.
Yeah. So that was basically the nub of the TTPP meeting. That was just a brief Zoom meeting. Other than that, I'll take any questions out of the rest of my report. Councillor Nadal.
Just in terms of the mayors and chairs, have you raised what the regional council is looking at in terms of replacement for a Buller councillor with the mayors and chairs? It seems to me that it's undemocratic the way they're heading.
Yep.
And like we've got examples in our own council where we've had vacancies, and provided they're within that 12 months of an election, we've taken the next highest polling.
Yep.
And just wondering whether we should voice our concern about the pathway that they're looking at.
Yeah, so I've certainly verbally spoken to Chair Haddock that was my view, and certainly obviously aware of who the next highest polling was a former BDC councillor with extensive local government experience, and in my view would have been a solid pair of hands, but it ultimately sits at the regional council table to make that decision. But yeah, more than once now I've endorsed that approach with Chair Haddock, and I understand CEO Pickford had also suggested that as a acceptable way forward for at the CE level as well. But ultimately, only the regional council can make that decision. I mean, we could write formally, but I think at the end of the day, it is regional council's decision to make. But yeah, it's been definitely communicated to the chair. Anyone think up, Councillor Webb? Excuse me.
Just in terms of one of your correspondence with the Sport Tasman funding allocation, has that been picked up for the long-term plan or into the workshop?
Yes, so that's a good pick up, and there has been some recent work this week, Chrissy, this
yeah,
week.
Thanks for picking that up. Feedback. So I've met with a local sports alliance representative, and I've also spoke to Sports Tasman, as well as corresponded with Principal at St Canice's School. So we are discussing what other options are available. And I touched base with Councillor Howard earlier today, just around what those options might look like for our long-term plan and for sports throughout the region. So there's some correspondence that I can share, but it will come back to council to decide what they want to do moving forward.
Deputy Mayor Basher.
I just have to say that I didn't write the certificate. I'm not sure who sent it, but it was sent from our school. But he is Westport's mayor, but he's also Buller's mayor. Yes, but I didn't think it was worthy of page one, but we certainly appreciate you.
Because it actually is factually correct that I am the Mayor of Westport, but I'm also the Mayor of Reefton and Inakaiki and Calumet. So yes, media weren't quite accurate in their portrayal of that. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Howard.
Just your response going to be to the one around page 240, your response around the traffic, because it brings up some of the things. Does it meet regulatory around the times and use and zoning rules? So I know this matter's going to be soon finished because the tunnel will be open and the trains will be back, but I think it highlights that maybe some of our rules aren't being met, and I just want to be assured that those are addressed and they do comply with statutory.
So this correspondent wrote to me previously and got a response around that, around the RMA matters he was raising. At the time, I'd have to go back and find that response, but it did come through this meeting. So I'm happy to take guidance on. I haven't responded to him as yet, so on anything further, I can go back and review that. But I think the only thing I would add is the specific things he's raising around the coal trucking. Got some words around that. Is there anything else? Okay, I will respond to him along those lines. Is there anything else in that report? Questions? Okay, so the recommendations are receive the Mayor's report dated 18th of December 2024 and noting the inwards and outwards correspondence, and you provided me some direction for response required. Is someone like to move that way? If I don't, Councillor O'Keefe, seconded Councillor Grafton. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Chief Executive Officer's report. So noting CEO Pickford is on leave. Is there any questions out of that report? And Paul will do his best to answer it. Councillor Howard.
Item 12, 11 noise complaints, which was higher than normal. What were those noise? I was just coming to mind, is that around the coal trucking, or is it music, or just is there a theme behind that, those noise complaints?
Mr. Bastian, push your button. Yep.
I don't have the exact detail, but we have had some issues regards to the trucking, as you stated, and there's been some other noise complaints about industrial areas, commercial areas. I don't have the exact detail of what those premises were. More than usual, it's just slightly higher than typical average for the month, that's all.
Any other questions for the CEO report? Oh, sorry, Councillor Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two questions, if I may, please. One is item 13, planning team. Maybe Simon can answer this. Just regarding the energy workload high, challenging issues when dealing with developments, particularly subdivisions within the district. For me, when I talk subdivision, I'm talking about the big stuff, you know, like we had plans, say, for Elmer Road, for example. But there's a lot of, with the large sections we have down here, the old Kiwi quarter acre and that, we talk about subdividing those properties as well. So when we're talking subdivisions here, are we talking just the small, the big commercial subdivisions, or just mum and dad land subdivisions? That's my first question, please.
Thank you, Councillor. We are talking about a major development that has, I suppose, been a lot of correspondence to and fro between the developer and the planners. It's causing a lot of additional work at the moment.
Is there a secondary question?
And second question, if I may, we move on to 16. Apologies, 15. the 149 projects in the FTA bill, Buller has one major project on the fast track list. And my question is more for confirmation. Initially, we were also looking at Elmer Road to be fast tracked. Has that now dropped off, or is there something that we need to be aware of in terms of Elmer Road and the proposed fast tracking at the time?
Through your worship, Elmore Road is not on the list that I'm aware of. This refers to Bathurst, is the fast track one for the Buller district.
So this is referring to Schedule 2, which I think is a list of named projects going through the part of legislation. I think the Elmer Road application may well still be in, but it's not part of this at this point, as far as I know. I don't think it's been rejected per se or withdrawn. I'm not sure where that's at now. Thank you, Councillor Reid. Any other questions? Okay, the recommendation is that we'll resolve the Chief Executive Officer's report dated 18th of December be received. Somebody like to move that way? Councillor Fowler, seconded. Councillor O'Keefe. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, portfolio leads, verbal updates, and we should be able to whiz through these. And this is for verbal updates from our various representatives. Councillor Webb, Anagahoa Community Board.
We haven't had a meeting this month. Our next meeting is on the 21st of January, but just some feedback from some happy residents that they would like to say thank you for the prompt. Resident had a problem with his water supply that's been going on for a long time, and that got sorted. So just wanted to pass that feedback, that they're really appreciative that staff came down and
excellent,
fixed their problem. So thank you.
Good to hear. Regulatory environment planning, Councillors Naylor and Basher. Nothing to report. I think there's meetings coming up if they haven't already happened. Community services, Councillors Howard and Farland.
The Christmas hours have been in the previous report and they're widely publicised on the council website. Long-term plan, staff have been writing to all previous recipients of long-term grants just to remind them about that they can't rely on any carryovers. They need to put a proposition to council, and that will be accountability process in any future grants. There's been engagement with Heritage West Coast. Heritage West Coast, we gave $10,000 towards the as co-funding towards another fund they had to assist heritage groups in the district. And so they rang up and Tony and myself had a good conversation with them. They outlined all the engagement they've had with local groups. They gave us an outline where the groups were up to, their future plans. That was really good. I can actually forward the notes I took of the meeting to councillors to give them a bit of overview. Personally, I think it was a very good spend, the external funds that they leveraged, and more importantly, these groups have developed a strategic plan moving forward. It's been bloody well spent, and the fact that our district co-funded them has meant, and the other councils didn't, they have spent all that money in the Buller district, so that we've got good bang for our buck. And moving forward, they've got some residual funding because we co-funded, and they're going to spend that engagement with it in our district, so that's a big plus. Staff have been working very closely with Heritage Information funders, looking at where we're going to go in the long-term plan, and also, as discussed earlier, with the sport. So we basically looked at everything we've given long-term funding to, and actually looking at where are we going forward. And there may potentially be some workshops or invitation to public forums for some of these groups, so there's an understanding of what they've done and what they propose to do moving forward should they be successful in funding.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, well done, Joe. Councillor Howard. Second, next one, infrastructure, Grafton and Western. Thank you. Nothing.
Just to say that the workshop's been rolling out anyway, so all the sort of stuff we've been discussing about, especially separation of piping and all that sort of thing. So,
yep, it's quite a bit to come in the new year on that. Corporate policy planning, councillors Reedy and Sampson. Anything? Councillor Reedy. Anything? Yep. Go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nothing to report. Nothing to report at the stage. I note John Salmon's email regarding the 3 or 4 policies that are required in the long-term plan. So that's going to be Christmas Day reading for me, and we'll get onto that in the new year. So that's all I've got to report at the moment, please, Mr. Mayor.
That's good, thank you. So councillors workshop those this afternoon. So we didn't go through them line by line, but we had a good discussion around various ones. So feedback to John as indicated that when you get a time over the holiday break. Smaller rural communities, Councillor O'Keefe and Webb. Councillor O'Keefe.
Yeah, so I just want to say that we had a great weekend out at Knucklewood because the pool had a community opening. That was through the Better Off funding that got moved around, and it's been a fantastic day. Rangers held off. It's a fantastic facility and we're so lucky to have it. Another good news story is on the 16th of February, the Waimangaroa Reserve Hall will be having their opening to the public finally after all these years of ups and downs. So yeah, just watch that space. And I'd also like to thank all the subcommittees for all their hard work over the last year. They've just done so much work and it's all volunteer. They don't get paid for it. Yep, and just all our other volunteer groups in our small communities that put endless hours in for free to help to make our place an awesome place to live. So yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And where are we up to? EV relationships. So not a lot to report there apart from I had some contact from a member of the public who had been corresponding with Ned around our arrangement that we have with iwi around representation and Ned's role. So I was able to share some information about our governance structure and things with that person. I think it's, yeah, it was, Ned was subject to some quite unpleasant emails, I felt, and so I think I've dealt with those. TTPP, I think we've covered off anything that was in that in the previous agenda. Joint Committee of the Westport Rating District. So that committee hasn't met, but I note that I won't share the information. I'm not sure if it's public or not. So that meeting has been, the next meeting of that has been deferred, I think until March, do you know?
I haven't heard it. I just want to express my dissatisfaction actually in that our rescheduled meeting's been rescheduled. I know there's a lot of dissatisfaction between the public ones who are on that committee because they feel they're not getting the information. It's not what they believe they were on that committee to do. Obviously now we're being impacted on rates, and yet the rating committee hasn't been there to discuss or have any input or feedback from the community. So yeah, dissatisfaction around how it's working. I probably can say it here that I was told it was being rescheduled because they haven't got the finances to present, and I don't think that's good enough. So I just want to express some disappointment.
Thank you. Yes, I don't disagree. There's some frustration there around how that works. That's something that the regional council will need to work through. I think there's clearly a rating impact on the Westport Rating District as a result of the work that is being carried out. And I think my understanding is that that is significant enough that it will trigger a consultation with the community next year. So that will be, I think there'll be a lot of light shone on that in the new year. But I hear what you're saying. Regional Transport Committee. Nothing new there. Okay, portfolio leads. When the council received verbal updates from the following chairs and council representatives for information, we've done that. I'll move that way. Seconder, Councillor Grafton. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Okay, public forum responses. Now, how do we want to respond? Let's deal with them in the order that we did them. So, Mayor Howard, former Mayor Howard, Gary. How would you like me to respond to his points? I've answered his issues previously, and I'm not sure there's a lot I can expand on other than to note his presentation and his frustration. Councillor Webb.
One of the three facts that he brought up was sorry. One of the points that he made up was his comments about Councillor Weston's letters to the editor. Like many other people, he seems to take that as Councillor Weston's comments as being from a council perspective. I think that's disappointing because they aren't the view of the table, and certainly not my own. I really welcome people that come and talk to public forum. I recognise how hard it is for them, and sometimes it's hard for us to hear what they have to say, but they've got every right to. And I don't feel it's my part to apologise on behalf of Councillor Weston, but I hope that he can perhaps recognise that we all come under public pressure and our wider families come under that pressure, but it's part of the parcel. And on behalf of him, I'd actually like to apologise because it's seen as a council response and certainly don't see it that way.
Thank you. So, yep, I previously have corresponded with Gary around that. Councillor Webb, you were next. And then Councillor Reedy, I think, had his hand up.
Just part of his public forum address was talking about some correspondence that didn't get you, that you as a mayor decided not to put in the agenda. And I did raise that last meeting about correspondence and what was the criteria, you know, how do people, what correspondence you put in and what you leave out. And you sort of said, oh, well, if it's a letter form, I put it in. And if there's anything of public interest, you know, I'm kind of easy. But then all of a sudden, I guess you're deciding to use your discretion about what you put in the mayor's correspondence or not. So could you maybe in response to this clarify it to the public what that it's to your discretion, then you'll choose what you put in mayor's correspondence or not?
Yes, so the test is always, well, there's multiple tests, so it is at my discretion. So the issues raised by Mayor Howard related directly to the agenda item that council had addressed. So my responses to him were based, as best I could, around the council decision. And so that was really all I communicated to him. So I didn't see a lot of value in adding that back into the mix. There was the issue he'd raised around conduct, and that had been addressed to all councillors, and that is a council law process anyway. And I felt that had been addressed as good as it could have been. So yeah, the test around discretion was I didn't consider there was a need for councillor input into the response, and so
is that
it has been responded to.
So your test is whether, so if the letter needs a council-wide response, then you'll put it in, but if it doesn't, then you'll use your discretion.
But if the council-wide response is not known to me, then for instance, how did you want to handle Mr. Curry's one? How did you want to handle something else today? Again, because there was new things in there, and I was open to whatever feedback you wanted. But ultimately, what I'm trying to avoid is relitigating issues that have already been presented to council. People have spoken on them, and council have ruled, because that is the rule. Council has ruled. There's a pathway forward. There's no merit in fact, for instance, elements of today's public forum, actually, I could have just excluded, because it's revisiting the same issue that he'd spoken on previously. But I mean, in the interest of everyone getting a fair go, that's fine. And so the same thing I think applies to correspondence. There's not really a lot to be gained in relitigating something that council has already resolved.
Is it not?
Albeit not to his satisfaction, but it's what was resolved.
Is it also when the member of public, wants it as a matter of public record, I guess, being in the public agenda, then it's obviously then a public document, or else they have to resort to publishing it in the paper?
Well, it depends whether or not you want the mayor's correspondence to become a vehicle for public grandstanding, for want of a better word, or for whatever reason, or whether it's actually about feeding back the decisions of council.
Okay.
And so that was again, it's mayor's discretion. What would it add? And he was free to speak as he was today, and publicised his views again, which I'm comfortable with.
Okay.
But noting like the normal, even elements probably of Mr. Smith's presentation today in public forum, you could argue, and I think he referred to himself, he's spoken on this subject before, and actually standing orders are quite clear that if a member is speaking on a matter they've already spoken on before, it's again chair's discretion as to whether there's any value in allowing them to do that. But in his case, it's a topic he's passionate about, and so he's entitled. I was use my discretion to allow that. But.
And just one other thing, I just wanted to reiterate what Councillor Howard said about the letters to the editor, and that I think it needs to be made clear that that's not a council view, that is a one person's view. And I do really appreciate people coming to the public forum, and I hope that they keep coming and being able to feel confident to express their opinions, and we're here to listen, not criticise. Well, we can debate it around the table, but then I think under our code of conduct that we need to make sure that we are then not going outside of the council table to criticise and belittle people that share their views. Because when we become an elected member, I would think that then we are, held in a higher regard in terms of our conduct. That's why we have a code of conduct. Yeah.
Yep, fair enough. Councillor Reedy, did you have your hand up?
I did, Mr. Mayor, and everything's been covered off. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sampson?
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate what Joe said, that I don't sort of abide by what sort of happened with those letters to the editor, and don't want to be tarred with the same brush. And I think what Gary did say in his response, even though it was repeated, we're meant to be honest and respect and be transparent, and I don't think that has sort of come out in that public forum exercise. So if we can sort of something in the letter to say that the bulk of the councillors or a number of councillors don't go along with that.
Yep, I can reiterate our openness to public forum. Yep, I'll come up with something on that. Okay. Grant.
You're right that a lot of what Mr. Howard said is repeating, but he did actually raise the issue of inconsistencies in the message, and mainly through the CEO's message. So I think he should have some input into your reply, and give some sort of explanation about why those inconsistencies were there.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Smith. I'll come up with something.
Thank you for his time. It's a lot of effort into it, you know.
And I think he was definitely quite bringing to point the benefits of some of the nature-based solutions to some of the natural hazard, and give examples of dune planting and the like. So I think we'll note his support of some of those what would you say, less engineered solutions to some of the natural hazard things. Mr. Reynolds? Sorry.
In terms of the big picture, he's very worried, from what I can gather, about the future viability of the port. And, you know, the fact that we've sunk some costs into making it viable, if you like. And so from the physical side, he has a lot of concerns. And I think, you know, there's these reports that he's referring to. Perhaps we need some technical people to say, well, look, understand your concerns, but we're quite confident that going forward, the port will be viable from a physical perspective as well as a financial perspective.
That's Mr. Reynolds. That was Mr. Reynolds. Did Smith talk about that, did he? I thought that was all Paul.
He's talking about the breakwaters
Yeah.
and conversations I've had.
Yep.
He's concerned about the wider picture of the
Yep.
viability of the port.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Reedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You just mentioned some wording about on non-engineering solutions. I was just wondering if you could, instead of that, environmental solutions. He was talking about planting out, and then maybe environmental, bringing that into the picture, which I wholly support. So I just wondering if you could just consider that word rather than the non-technical side of it.
I think the the term they often use is nature-based solutions. Yeah.
Agree. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yep.
Got that? Okay, Mr. Reynolds. Councillor Howard.
There's a heap of questions he's got here. I seem to be aware that a lot of these questions have been answered with staff, and staff have spent a considerable amount of time with them. Some of them are good questions, but how much time and what? Do we need to maybe pick up that and just have some staff comments put along some of it, just some brief notes? Or
I would suggest that's in the form of a Lagoima, very similar to Lagoimas we've already received. The fact that it's come through and been tabled should be treated as a document that's been received by council.
Okay, that's a good idea, because there's some very specific questions someone's going to have to.
Some of them may have been answered already on previous Lagoimas, but there may be some new ones we haven't seen before.
I think that's important that we do treat it with the appropriate, with a bit of rigour, because there's some quite historic things that are going to have to be researched and dug out and contracts found and things. So if I was to respond that his if not already, he may have already done it, as you said, Mr. Bastian, but if I write to him saying that his written document he provided us will be submitted as a Lagoima, is that, or what? How would that work?
So he's formally asked questions of council.
Yep.
So it's a form of correspondence, treated like any other correspondence with verbal, via email, etc.
Yeah. So I suggest that I think maybe the top 4, the ones he talks about at the top, which are the high level sort of ones. I think the ones in the are just examples he's given. So I think if we look at the top of his page there, his main questions are, so if we were to address his main questions, 1, 2, 3, and 4, because that's how he's described them, as Lagoima, and I will refer that into our Lagoima process and they'll be answered formally to him.
How
Councillor.
does the Lagoima work with, like, if he has already previously asked those questions, maybe in different words, can you just cut and paste the answer you've already had before?
I think that if that is the case, then Kirsten, who does our Lagoima, will have access to previous ones that have been provided and may respond that that's already been answered or already in the public arena is another one if it's been already on our website or in council report. Councillor Howard.
I guess my concern is that a lot of these questions are being put out as misinformation. They're being even misconstrued or confused between different projects or anything like that, and that unless they're responded to, it's going out to the community as misinformation, and it's not helping. So beyond the Lagoima or the first lot of ones, I do think just need some brief comments against the whole examples.
I'm personally not in favour of that approach. I just think I think they're just examples he's giving to illustrate his points above. Unless there's, I don't want to go down that road. I'm literally, Councillor Noel.
A little bit concerning to me when he talks about the $500,000 for the master plan being paid by the ratepayer. So obviously, the message that this is external funding is not getting out there. And I think a lot of the other things that he's asking, we've got nothing to hide. We just obviously the methods we're using of trying to get them out there aren't quite working for them, and probably others as well.
Because there are a number in that list that I understand that are yes, they're the number that's been paid to these people, but it's like the University of Canterbury stuff, and that I understand was external funding as well. Because that was the reason we went in with University of Canterbury, was to access some research grant or something they were able to get by doing that. So
I don't know whether we go to RAC, with a report about these external fundings and where they fit in, so that the public have got a bit of a record, of exactly where the money's come from, where it's been spent.
Okay. If everyone's comfortable, I'll deal with, my suggestion is we deal with 1 through 4 at the top as a Lagoima and refer that into the Lagoima process, and leave it with me to discuss with staff in terms of the rest of it, because it's not stuff we have access to anyway, and around that comms and how that, correcting any obvious misunderstandings he has. Is that okay? I think that's the simplest way to do it. Okay. If that's all good. So that's that dealt with. Can we then close the meeting? Okay, so we'll close the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance and wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Thank you, staff, and hope you have a bit of a break.